Wi-Fi Sheep would like to say a huge thank you to all of you that kindly support us. Help us continue to bring new videos like this. Join patreon.com/Wi-Fi Sheep from just $1 a month. Hello, how you doing? And a warm welcome back to youtube.com/Wi-Fi Sheep with me, Tom. Now, many of you will know that I am a huge fan of retro, obscure operating systems. And with the launch of the Atari 400 Mini just around the corner, I'm recording this at the end of February, it's due next month in March 2024, I thought this was a perfect opportunity to take a look at something called BeePi. Now, BeePi is a Raspberry Pi based emulation solution for running Atari ST, TT and Falcon, which is based on the original GEM desktop operating system, which was ported over from x86 to run on Motorola 68000 series, which the original Atari ST line used. This project is absolutely amazing, and what's best of all, it's completely free and it does sort of work. Now, there are a few caveats. First of all, I don't know exactly what I'm doing. I'm not a sort of seasoned Atari ST user. So there's many of you that are probably going to be watching this video shouting at your screens going, what is he doing? When I tried to showcase this on our 8 till late live stream program, I'll be honest with you, there was an awful lot of sort of random clicking around and hoping for the best. Saying that, even as a sort of seasoned or novice user, it's still absolutely fantastic, and I'm really excited to be able to share this with you today. The second caveat is it does tend to crash, probably because I didn't know what I was doing. I was able to crash this several times, so it's not a daily driver by any stretch of the imagination, but I still think it's worth a try. And the third caveat is at the moment it supports up to Raspberry Pi 4 or 400. It doesn't appear to be Raspberry Pi 5 compatible. At least I've not tried it, and the documentation doesn't state that it is. So, understanding all that, I thought in this video we'll do a complete fresh install and upload of BeePi, and I'll show you how to set it up and get it running on your Raspberry Pi. Okay, so let's talk about target devices and boards. Now, BeePi is primarily aimed at the Raspberry Pi. It also has an x86 PC version. Now, when I tried it before, I tried on Raspberry Pi 3, and I actually have one of the original 3B boards, and it worked fine. Now, the reason for trying to run on these is I actually had quite a few of these spare, so I thought, can we actually get one of these to do something useful, as most of them are now sitting around semi-redundant. And yeah, it worked, but it was a little bit sluggish. So I ended up switching up to the Raspberry Pi 3B Plus. This is the Plus version with an added heatsink on top. Slightly different board, slightly enhanced spec, but very similar to the original 3. And again, this ran okay, but I do think if you want to get maximum performance, bearing in mind this is an emulation solution, if you want maximum performance, I think you really do need to go up a gear to the 4, or ideally a Raspberry Pi 400 all-in-one, which for emulating something like the Atari ST or Atari Falcon is absolutely superb, as those were all-in-one based microcomputers. And although obviously the 400 is much smaller in physical size, its all-in-one sort of microcomputer form factor makes it the ideal candidate. Plus the fact the 400 is a little bit faster than the stock Raspberry Pi 4. Okay, so in order for this to work, we need a micro SD card. I have one here, which is a 16 gig card, which I actually already flashed BeePi on an old version of BeePi. I got it here as BeePi Gem. And what I'll do is I'll scrap this version and I'll reflash this card. I'm going to pop that into a USB adapter because I don't have an SD card slot on my PC device. And I'm going to use a Windows 11 PC to flash. You can flash this with Mac or Linux systems, but I'll show you how to do this today on Windows. So first place we need to head over to is sites.google.com/bbox68k. I'll put the link to this particular website in the description of this video. This is the home of bbox68k, and you see here site dedicated to Atari ST, STE, TT and Falcon emulation. And it's also the home of BeeKey, BeePi and EasyMintOS. Now, this project seems to have a number of different names. So bear with me if I've got this a little bit wrong, but it's my understanding that this is the actual emulator core, and it emulates up to a 68040 at 350 megahertz, and as you can see there, it's running at 3.4, and it can actually clock right up to 7 gigahertz. You can see there. So there's the information. You can have a read that yourself. If we go down to news, here are the downloads, and we want to download this, which is BeePi free. Here is BeePi free. So this gives you an idea of what the desktop looks like. And we have the downloads. We have a download for free, and we have a download for 4 and 400, which is the one I'm going to download. Now, this takes quite a while to download properly. So I've actually gone ahead and I've already downloaded it ahead of time. So here it is as a zip, and I'm just going to extract all, and we'll just extract that. Okay, so we've got that extracted, and here it is in my documents, and we'll just double click through, and you'll see it's actually here as a split series of .7z files, and the first one is what we want. Now you do need third-party extraction software, so I've got WinRAR or RAR archive software installed, just the free version. So I'm going to double click and ask to extract to, and we'll just put that straight back to documents. And you can see here it's now extracting, and we have the BeePi 3.1 Pi4 image or .img file, which is being extracted. And what that's doing is that's taking all those other sub files you've just seen here, and it's collating them all together into one .image format, which will be fully extracted, and that's what we need to be able to flash to the micro SD card. And in order to successfully flash a Raspberry Pi image to an SD card, you need an external third-party program. In most cases, I use Balena Etcher, which is free, and I've got it here. I'm going to run this obviously here on Windows. You can run Balena Etcher quite successfully on Linux and Mac as well. So first thing to do is to select the file we want to flash, and here it is. So documents, and there it is. So we say, okay, so that's the image file. Well, I'm going to select the SD card, which is here. So we'll select, and then it's just a case of clicking flash. Now this will take a little bit of time, and Windows may require some access privileges. I know on a Mac it needs you to put your password in before we can do this, but we'll give that a moment. And if you get an error like this, just hit cancel, because that's basically what's happening is Windows can't read the SD card that you just put in whilst you're flashing it. So don't try and reformat the card whilst you're doing this formatting process of writing the image to the SD card, because that will mess things up. Right, that took a good half an hour, but we are now done. So make sure that it has said flash complete, and if possible, do let it run the checksum, because I have had it where it's flashed it, then ran the verifier or checksum, and that's failed, which meant the card wasn't flashed successfully. But this one looks fine, so we're all done, so we can close Balena Etcher. Let's head back over now to the Raspberry Pi 400, which is our target device. Let's put the SD card in, obviously making sure we get it in the right way around. There we go. So HDMI is already connected up, and I'm just going to add a mouse. Now, we can configure Wi-Fi, and that's something we will do. We might need a cable connection as well, but let's see how we do. So we're pretty much ready to go. Just going to add 5 volts power, USB-C, and like so. Okay, so we should be good now to go for the first power-up. Incidentally, if I can just bring your attention back to the BeePi image, you have got this welcome PDF, which is well worth just looking at, as it goes through some basic information about how to set up, including the first steps and what you actually need to do. So we're going to run through this now. So let's head back over, let's power up our Raspberry Pi for the first boot. Okay, so the first screen we are greeted with is this, which is the Unix or Okay, so the first screen we are greeted with is this, and this is the Linux kernel, and the login details are Pi, and the password is BeePi. And that will now bring us to this setup screen. So we want to just run through those options as we've already seen on the PDF document. So we want to go to, first of all, advanced options, number 6. And we want to expand the filing system. Localization options, number 5 next. So we can configure our time zone. Europe, set myself up as London because that's for UK time where I am. Back to localization options, keyboard options, and as you can see, there's quite a lot of keyboard options. We can come back and set this if we're not quite sure. I don't know how many keys are on a, without counting them, I don't know how many keys are on a 400 keyboard, so we might come back to that. Again, we can come back to all this, so it's not a huge issue. Again, localize options, and just need to set up Wi-Fi under GB. There we go. That'll do for the moment, so we'll say finish. We want to reboot. Yes, we do want to reboot. And we now get the BeePi splash screen. The system will reboot a few times. This now runs the EmuTOS setup. This now sets up the 68,000 emulated space. So we've ran the Linux 64-bit space, which is running a Debian core. We're now running the emulator space on top. That's in turn is about to load. And here we go. And this gives us the BeePi desktop. And is a modern version of Gem used on the Atari ST, especially the later Atari ST systems. So this is the keyboard layout, which, by the way, I think usually defaults to Spain. And the reason for that is that the development for this is actually Spanish. It's a Spanish project, so you'll need to set this back to... No, I'm actually using England, so English setup. And I don't technically have a keypad over there, so let's just have a look, see if there's... We'll say, yeah, okay, so we'll use that layout. I'll say permanent for the time being. By the way, I have no idea what is going on over here. That seems to be stock standard to this build. So your guess is as good as mine with that. Okay, so we can close that. It now asks you for screen resolution. What do you want to run in? So we're running, by the way, the resolutions are mostly square aspect ratios. So I'm going to drop this down a little bit to 720p. Color depth is fine at 32-bit, so we'll say OK. And it basically wants, if you want to set up a Samba drive, I don't at the moment, so we'll click cancel to that. This will now go for another restart process as it sets itself up, but it should be the last one we need to do. Just doing a file check for us. Again, as I said in the intro, I'm not familiar with how the 68000 series works. So here we are then. This is your Gem very modern Gem desktop. And this is running in an emulated 68,000 or 68K Motorola space. So it is hopefully relatively, if not 100% compatible with later Atari ST software. We've got a system. There is all the folders for system. A lot of the folders you can see are actually Linux or Unix based folders, are very, very similar. We do have the NetSurf web browser. We have home directory. We do actually have a series of applications already installed, including things like games. There's Pac-Man, Minesweeper, Tetris. We also have some floppy images here. And I believe if you actually double click these, the system will do a quick reset. And actually boots. Now, of course, now I'm in the wrong aspect ratio, unfortunately. But if I just click, there we are. I can set my aspect ratio up correctly on capture for you. So this actually runs as the much earlier Atari ST system, or a hybrid of it, put it that way. And this actually gives you compatibility back with those 16-bit Motorola era software, which is actually very impressive. And you can probably hear sound actually works as well. So I'd be lying if I knew how to get out of this, but we can. You shut down. I think we do have to do a complete restart. And I'll just change my aspect ratio again. There we are. So that just shows how very quickly you can have a play with this and get stuff running. It runs all right. It runs better here. So I think you really do need... The faster Raspberry Pi you can give this, especially to 400, I think is at the moment the optimum machine for running this kind of stuff. So, yeah. As I said in the intro, I don't know how this works properly. So we do have things like Office Suite, which you can just right-click. Office Suite, things like Atari Works, you can just bring up word processor, database, spreadsheet. So if I go word processor, new, it brings up a word processor. Which, that's interesting, is a little bit buggy. I've been capable of crashing this or finding all sorts of kind of slightly strange errors. So it's very much a work in progress. It's impressive it runs, and it's something very different for the Raspberry Pi. And as I said, this should be compatible with a lot of the Atari-based software. So next thing I suppose we could try is NetSurf. Now, NetSurf is default browser. Now, there's no internet setup or Wi-Fi setup at the moment. Now, one very interesting little quirk is if I go in via wired Ethernet cable instead of Wi-Fi, and I just pop that into the back of my 400. Now, sometimes this causes the OS here to actually lock up. Let's see if we're any chance of that working now. And there you go. So it's literally just locked up. It was working, now it's locked up. Apparently, Control-Alt-Delete does actually work. So if we go back, let's see if that works. Control-Alt-Delete. No, that's completely locked up. So we'll have to do a power cycle manually, which is not ideal. So yeah, whenever you sort of connect, it works for a split second, then it freezes. So it's just one of the many little glitches and errors with this system. Saying that, you know, it's still worth a play with. I wouldn't do anything super important with it for obvious reasons. But for playing and trying out retro software, especially for the Atari line and the later Atari line, it's well worth a look. And there's so much to sort of play with and do with this. And I've only just scratched the surface myself. So you can see here how it's checking the file system. Because it wasn't unmounted correctly, which is correct because we just literally crashed out the system. And you'll find you'll be doing this quite a lot. So we're now back up and we've got internet connection going on because it's got the weather data. So let's go back to NetSurf. And there we are, Google does work. Admittedly, very little websites do then work with this, unfortunately. So, for example, if I go to wifisheep.co.uk, yeah, my site doesn't work properly with it, which I think is more of an issue with my site, because it sort of works and then it kind of glitches out. So It's probably more of an issue with my website. So unfortunately with NetSurf, very little stuff works. You kind of need early websites. Atari. But yeah, you're not, I mean, it's usable. You're not going to be running Netflix or YouTube through this web browser, but I'm sure you could actually use this to get hold of and download some software to maybe have a play with stuff, possibly. Lots of stuff here on the Atari ST, so well worth a look. Just quickly down the bottom here, I'll show you TOS Win 2, and you can open the TOS program. Got some stuff already preloaded, so again, I'm not sure what I'm doing here, but does that work? I don't know what I did, but yeah, see, there's options and compatibility layers. I think a lot of this is actually emulators on top of emulators, which is why it can start to sort of grind up a little bit. We've also got this start menu down the bottom, so we've got my documents, recent documents, start tools, setup. So if you need to change any of the keyboard layouts or anything that you haven't set up properly, it's all here. So we've got workspace configuration, for example, and so you can actually customize the color layout, the tools, everything you want. So it's really quite cool actually, and this is such a fantastic little project, well worth playing with, and something quite cool to be doing with the Raspberry Pi. Okay, so that's basically the system up and running. If you're interested, it's free. Just need anything up to a 16 gigabyte SD card, probably 16 to 32 would be ideal. Go and have a play with it yourself. Details, links are in the description to this video. As I said in the intro, I don't know what I'm doing with it, so I need to have a play around, and I think what we need to do is make a part 2, a follow-up, when I've actually got some software, some games and things up and running, so I can kind of show you in a bit more detail what works and what doesn't work. But in the meantime, obviously do go and have a play with this yourself. It is fantastic, and for what is pretty much a one-man project, it's a great tribute to a computing platform and a community, one of the lesser known ones within the kind of retro computing space. If you haven't done so already, please do consider liking and subscribing. Thanks so much for your company, and I'll see you again real soon right here on the channel. Until next time, bye for now.